Bonsoir tout le monde.
Bonsoir.
Good evening to everybody.
Good evening.
Thank you everybody for coming. I want to start the evening by wishing a very special happy birthday to Monique. Monique is like a protocol for me at least. And I know that without her, none of this would be here. So I want to thank you really for sharing your day with me, even though you grabbed it and you were chunky. And you were really nonchalant and classy about it and really altruistic about it. And I want to thank you for that. That's really kind of you. Thank you.
My name is Lahiny Pierre. I'm an author. I'm a Haitian author. And today is the release of two books. One of the books is an essay, and the other one is a novel. What I have done for these two books is I have prepared a lecture that I intend to take a lecture on the road with the book. So each time that I'm having any type of book events pertaining to those two books, I would say speaking the lecture, if that's the proper English word. I will be speaking the lecture, it will be that same lecture, and that lecture's theme is building spiritual bridges, building spiritual legacies. So the idea of building bridges, building spiritual legacies, because as I thought of building bridges and building spiritual legacies, to me it's like a bridge is a tool that you can use to connect two distant, I would say, so it's two distant spots, and you can use a bridge to connect those two spots. So the fact that we need a bridge to begin with speaks of a disconnection, you see? So in building the bridges, you are actually acknowledging that there isn't a way there. And if there is no way there to connect those 2 points, then we need to build a bridge. And the bridge this time around is about our spiritual legacies as far as us in the 21st century. So I also want to tell people when I did this lecture that as I wrote this book, as I wrote the essay and I wrote the novel, I wrote it with the understanding that it was incomplete. Like, not incomplete to say the book is not done, but incomplete because the thoughts and the knowledge that I share is not complete until I share it with others, and until others give their feedbacks and others add to it. And the experiences and the repertoire of the people that we meet and the people that we interact with, and that's where we begin to have something on a more complete level. Until that sharing happens, until the connection happens with the books and with the lecture, it is incomplete. So to stay on my shelf and to stay on my computer makes it incomplete until I share with you and with others. So as we know that, and we know this not just by spiritual telepathy, we know this by historical facts, and we know it having had our ancestors tell us. We know that the world didn't start in the Americas, it started in the continent, in the African continent. And so when I was writing the book, one of the major issues that I really wanted to dissect and I wanted to take apart was the issue of race. Because as we are entering the 21st century, it is quite evident that race is phantom. It's a phantom, it's a ghost. What is a race? How am I to know this guy is not black? This guy behind me, Andrew, is not black? I cannot know. I cannot know just by looking at his skin color that he's not of Asiatic descent. I cannot tell. So race in that sense, it becomes a phantom. So in order to really balance what we have going on in the 21st century, we're going to have to grab onto more concrete evidence, to more concrete realities, to more tangible facts. And those facts are grounded in lineage, in ancestral lineage, in your culture, your traditions. Those are more resounding facts than to say, oh, I'm black and I'm white and I'm yellow. Really, it's useless to continue to divide the world according to race, because the world is in a division. Just like the flowers are assorted as to their wellness, we were already there. We were already living in harmony with Mother Nature and living in assortment with each other. So the issue of race is an issue that was introduced to us by the European terror concept, and the issue of race is an issue that needs to be abolished. So as we are entering and as we are pushing into the 21st century, we are seeing Western terror systems as the domineering system in all of our lives. Whether you live in Haiti, whether you live in New Orleans, whether you live in Miami, whether you live in Istanbul, you are going to realize that the power that is driving forth, that is driving us into the 21st century is Western terror system. They call it European supremacy. I don't think there's anything supreme about it. Something that is supreme is something that we can all agree on, is something that can bring balance. So to use the word supreme here, as I was writing that book, I also needed to adjust and to change what we were thinking up here. And I was using what we would say here to kind of click what's here. So when we are calling these European supremacy, there is no need to use that word, because as we have seen as we have been witnessing from our ancestral lineage down to us, from the 14th, 15th century, it has not been anything supreme about it, it has been terror. So I've interchangeably, within the books, I've interchangeably replaced, every time that a normal person or the average person would use supremacy, I change that to terror, because that's what it has been. And it has been by the manifestation of what we are right now, by the manifestation of the division that we exhibit right now. One of the things that I bring up in the book is the idea of religion, is the idea of using Greco-Romano religious modes to conquer the world and to make the world submit. So, this is where it gets tricky. We could have had a chance. We could have had a chance if our African forefathers didn't fall in with the European terror system. But we have to admit, if you're going to speak about European culpability, you have to also speak about the African culpability, because without African assistance, European terror would not be here today. There goes my friend. I told him I would run and get him. Hi, come in. I just ran and got you virtually. Come in. Okay. So, as we are speaking about African culpability, for the Africans who aligned and who became in alliance in the 15th, 14th century with European terrorists, these Africans also found out that the terror that they were endorsing did not do them well, but this is where they went wrong. Where they went wrong is what they thought they were going right, is they thought that if they too adopted the religions of the Greco-Romano system, we, the kidnapped victims and their descendants and their lineage, would not think twice that something had been done, that there was a coup d'etat, that there were political coups, that there were wars, and that there was illegal kidnapping of over 35 million people out of that continent from the 14th, 15th century to the 18th century. So by adopting a Jesus, the African continent thought it would also con us into forgetting where we come from and what really is the true religion of the world. And the true religion of the world is common sense and basically love. So the African himself has failed, and he has failed exactly when he tries to use the same methods. And the methods that I'm talking about are greed and other type of terror that's been used by Europeans. When the African himself tried to use those methods to hurt his own people, it never works. It works for the clique that's eating and the clique that's making the money, but it never works to elevate the mass into something that we can be proud of, or something that can manifest without the poverty and the diseases and the unsanitary situations. It has not worked. So as we are talking about European terror, we also have to know that back then, from way back then, until right now in the 21st century, we are asking Africa and the leaders, and it's over like 52 countries in there. I'm not sure of the exact number of countries, but of all these countries in there, we also have to notice that they have not agreed to a spiritual amendment with the past. We see them endorsing Christianity, we see them endorsing the big churches and the big movements, but we have not seen them come together as a collective to amend the sins of the past, to amend the fragments of the past, and to also, and this is very important, because as there was a coup d'etat happening, as there were people being kidnapped, these people were leaving behind immense wealth. And so, the reason why also Africa decided to go along with the Jesus factor is to hide the fact that the people that they had betrayed were owners of great wealth, and if they had to come back, those wealth would have to be returned. So it was about wealth, it was about political instability, it was about power, transferring from one hand to the next. And so, in pushing forth a Jesus factor, we, the original people of the world, had no chance. We had no chance because not only was this Jesus factor being pushed on the side of the people who were kidnapping us, the place where we were coming from was also in alliance with them to say, hey, this is what we are. So how, and the question that I asked in the book is, how has African spirituality survived to last until right now? Like, it's amazing that we can be in the 21st century and I'm wearing things that seem African, things that are of African nature or African descent or African, or made in Africa. How do I still identify with that continent, or how do I still identify with that point of view because it has been so much done to drive us away and drive us apart from that. So to answer those questions, what I really learned is that the African himself, and whether he's on the African continent or whether he's outside of the African continent, African spirituality will manifest. So when I'm saying, and so as I was writing the book, what became really difficult for me were the terms I was using, because at one point I wasn't feeling all the way right with using the word Africa, because what I'm really referring to is a native culture that belongs to the original people of the world, and the original people of the world just so happen to have burgeoned on the continent of Africa, and it was because of the locality. And as you can, if you are into geography like I am, you will see that landmass in Africa is solid. Like, how many times do we hear about an earthquake in Africa? You know, and the highest peak is also there. So that geography and that landmark has more to do with spiritual, I would say, with achieving some sort of spiritual balance. And so, as I was really comparing and contrasting the type of amendment that needed to be remedied between the African continent and the European terrorists, I realized, and I said it before, but I'm repeating it, that no matter where the African is, no matter which continent, that spirit will strive. And if anyone dares to hinder that spirit, it will manifest in chaotic behaviors. So it will spill like laughter. You ever seen somebody just laugh and just uncontrollably cannot stop? And that is what's happening to us now as the descendants of the original people of the world, and as we have been faced with so much restriction of the spirit and the soul, we are seeing behaviors that are not typically human, but we are seeing them anyway because, but like I said, it's just spilling, it's just bursting like laughter because of all these sanctions and all these restrictions and all these embargoes on the spirituality of the native original people of the world to begin with. So, how does voodoo come into play when we talk about all of these things? How can we use voodoo as a map? It's like, how can I use voodoo as my GPS to stability and as my GPS to not just to stability but to wealth? Okay, So, the one thing that we have to also understand is that voodoo is not a religion. If the European terrorists want us to present voodoo as a religion because that's how they package everything. But voodoo really is a way of life. And I'm going to show you with an example of what I mean. I don't know how many of you have heard or have read or learned about the Islamic Almoravid movement. The Islamic Almoravid movement is a movement of terror around the 11th century and involved the taking over of Western Africa.